All right, ladies and gents, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Erick Caceres. You are about to get, this is the story of a junior year high school dropout with no GED and no college degree, building a 12-year career in engineering through adversity and perseverance. He's the real thing.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eric, and this is awesome. I have a Kit Kat, so I'm going to eat it while I'm doing my presentation. So I've never done one of these before. I've talked to high school kids at my company in like a conference room, but I've never given a talk to a kind of sparse room. But my talk is a little unorthodox, and hopefully that's okay. So I used to be in a band a long time ago, and that's what I thought my life was going to be playing in front of, hundreds of people every night, all across the world. And I'm just going to play a video, just so I can kill 2 minutes of my talk. That's me. Isn't that cool? So that was back in 2011. That was like the last song, and everyone gets on stage and goes crazy. And this is in Florida at a big festival, and I got to play with like 1 million bands that I love. And let me just go back one slide. But yeah, so, I mean, that's what I thought my life was going to be like. I had been playing drums since I was 14, and I was 30 when we did this, and I had just come back from being in Europe, and I had just come back from playing in like 20 countries or something, and I had been gone for months. So when I came back, I was totally broke, and I was 30, I was divorced, and I had been into my engineering career for about 6 years. And I said I just quit everything and I just wanted to go on tour, and that's what I wanted to do. Lo and behold, you can't really live a life like that, because I didn't really want to be stuck. One of our band members lived in a room underneath stairs in San Francisco. We're from the Bay Area, so it was basically like Harry Potter, where we just lived under the stairs and you paid $800 a month for rent. So there was that. So what does this have to do with engineering, and what does this have to do with being Latino, and what am I even talking about? So I'm sure a lot of you are asking that question, and I really hope that I can actually answer those by the end of my talk, but I cannot guarantee anything. So we're gonna go way back. That's me. Aren't I cute? I was like 6 years old. I was an avid Chicago Bulls fan. This is in the 80s, so I know you're all too young, but This was when Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and stuff were all really big. And I just want to point out, I know that this is a meme now, but these lasers were legit back in the day. This is the thing that we did. But now it's funny with cats and stuff. I just want to give you an interesting fact. This was around 1987, and around that time, there were less than 4% of Latinos who graduated with a bachelor's degree in engineering. I don't know how many Latinos were actually in engineering school or anything, but 4% is a really tiny number. I mean, that's probably, this is the US, so that's probably like in a very low hundreds maybe. So that's not a lot. And I didn't know back then, but the rest of my life was going to be involved in engineering pretty heavily. But anyway, let's move on. So, we'll go over some definitions here. This is the Chilean flag. This is where my family's from. And Latino, the definition is a person of Latin American descent. So that would be me. I'm a first generation, I guess is what you'd say. So my parents came here from Chile back in the 70s. They came here to escape a dictatorship. Also, I'm Hispanic as well because I came from a Spanish-speaking country, and that is what being Hispanic is, and I speak Spanish as well, which is something that I got to use a lot, but I've lost over the years because my mom always wanted to speak English to me. But my brother was born in Chile, and we were really poor, and my parents didn't speak any English when we came here, and when they came here, they went to school right away. They went to college. They learned how to speak English. They did everything that they could to sort of assimilate themselves and to be just part of the US and just part of the country. And they actually became teachers. My dad became a math teacher at a high school back in California, which is where I'm from. And my mom was a preschool teacher. And they both did that for decades. I mean, that is what they did. They continued their education, and then they continued to become, they continued as being teachers. And my dad actually taught English as a second language, and he taught special needs kids. So, he was a really great teacher. Him and I didn't see eye to eye because as you already know, I didn't graduate high school, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Let's see. Another cute picture of my family. So that's my parents. I promise I'm going to get to engineering at some point in my talk. So these are my parents. This is my brother. He's not really a part of the story, but I just thought you'd want to see him. And then that's me, again, later at some point. So when I was growing up, I didn't like school, and I lived in a really bad neighborhood. I sort of lived like the cliche story that you hear, like success story of, I lived in a really bad neighborhood. There's a lot of crime, there's a lot of gang activity. I'm Latino, so I was a part of that. I wasn't a criminal, but I associated myself with those people because they were in my neighborhood and they looked like me, and we had common ground, and we all, had moms that spoke Spanish and made really good food, and we just all, knew each other, and I hung out with them, and I thought that was my identity, and I thought that was something that I was supposed to do, and that was just what my surrounding was. That was my environment. My environment was to be a part of that. And what I learned was that as I went to high school and I dropped out, I sort of, I fed into that. I I rebelled as much as I could. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. I think I went to college for like a semester and then I left. And I just worked, not even in engineering, I worked at Blockbuster, which you probably don't know what it is. But it was a store where you went to get videos, VHS tapes. Actually, I worked for Netflix for a hot minute, but that's a different story. So, yeah, I mean, I basically, for all intents and purposes, I became like that uneducated Latino with zero experience, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do. So we're going to fast forward here, because I'm running out of time, and I apologize. But so here are my first jobs in engineering. So when I worked at Sony as a QA analyst around the time of the PSP and PS3 releases. I don't know if anyone remembers those, but I was sleeping on a friend's couch, and a friend of mine worked there, and I said, "How do you get that job?" Because I want to test video games all day and make money for it, and I got it, and I was one of like 200 QA testers who were testing all those games, and it was a really fun time. It was my first. I think that job being my first was what gave me the confidence and the ability to want to continue in that, because I said, well, if I can do this for the rest of my life, then that's amazing. And at the time I was trying to play music and I wanted to do what I did when I turned 30, but I didn't know if that was going to happen. So doing something like that as a job was amazing. And mind you, when I started that job, I had no experience, I had no engineering background, I had no degree, no high school diploma. When I walked in, the person at the main office asked me about, if I had graduated, and I said no, and they said, "Oh, but you went to vocational school, right?" And I said no, and they said, "Oh, but you took classes at your companies, right?" And I was like, "No, it's just experience. It's the perseverance and the attitude that you take to the job that is what gets you to where you're going." I'm not advocating to quit school and just go work, but what I'm saying is that because you have an opportunity to hear my story, what I like to say is that my story is the wrong road, but I got lucky and ended up somewhere great. What I'm telling you is continue down this road of being an engineer, going to school for it, and learning what you can, and you can actually have more opportunities at an earlier age. I mean, I'm 36 now. It took me a long time to get to this point. So I'll just zip through these. And Punch Entertainment was the first place where I got into mobile games, and that was back when there was 8 gajillion, this is a real number, I promise. I'm just kidding. There was like 150 different types of phones back then before iPhones, and you had to test on every phone, you had to test one game on every single phone, and that was really weird and crazy. And that was my first time in code quality, where at Sony I was just doing black box testing, where I was just testing the game itself on the console and not actually looking at the code. But here is where I was first got into looking at the code, and that's where I decided to continue what I told myself was, without any education, what is the best way for me to go forward? And that is to look at code and to try to learn as much as I could within the quality assurance space. And then I went to iWin, which is a small company that did PC games, and then we did Facebook games when it got really popular. We actually did all like the game show games like Family Feud and Deal or No Deal. And at that company is where I began to find my niche of how to learn about back-end and front-end engineering and how to test it. That is where we had just top-notch, amazing, bleeding-edge technology that was being worked on. We had an amazing operations team, and that is where I learned about just front-end, back-end, anything coding that I could pick up. I'm not saying that I can actually code. What I'm saying is that I decided to be able to figure out how to test it as opposed to write it, because that's the space that I live in versus being a software developer, which is much harder. So during all this time when I was at these jobs, I never thought about my ethnic background, and I never thought about like the color of my skin or my heritage being a hindrance. But as I look back, it definitely was an issue, and it definitely was something that stopped me from moving forward in certain points of my career, where I was the guy in the room who didn't have a degree, who didn't know anything about engineering, and only knew what I knew about what was on the job. So as I look back, hindsight is 2020, right? So I look back and I go like, oh yeah, you know, I was that one guy in the room that didn't know anything, but I tried really hard to pretend to know things and to ask a million questions. And that's something else that is really important to do in life, is just, you know, even if you don't know anything, even if you're the one person in the room and you think that you're the dumbest person in the room, it's okay to ask the question, right? It's okay to ask, what is that, right? Like, and if someone may laugh at you, but, well, hopefully not at a job, but if you get asked that question, I mean, if you ask that question, you get an answer, then you're that much smarter, right? So, I'm almost done, I promise. So, I'm sure some of you know what this means, but there's STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I just learned this recently, that only 2% of the current US STEM workforce is Latino Hispanic. So, you know, the US STEM workforce isn't very huge, but imagine only 2% of that is Latino Hispanic, and I'm part of that 2%. So I'm here because I want to represent this 2% and say that if there is anyone here that feels left out or feels like their background is an issue, that it shouldn't be, and that you are capable of being able to move forward in this field, and that we would want more diversity in this field, because the products that we release are for customers, and it can't all just be made by the same type of person, right? The more diversity, then the better the product. So my present day is where I work at Elemental Technologies, which is an Amazon Web Services subsidiary. So Amazon bought our company. They said, we love what you guys do. So Elemental, so if you have an iPad or a laptop or an iPhone, or if you have a TV that streams stuff, those movies that you binge watch and the TV shows that you watch, Elemental makes that happen. So it's our product that allows companies to stream those videos in different sizes and in 4K and in different quality. And that's the stuff that we work on, and it's really fun. And it's been amazing, and it's where I learn even more. And, you know, I'm even more the guy that doesn't have an engineering degree, because everyone has an engineering degree there, and everyone is amazing and smart and crazy good at what they do. But what I love about this company is that it gives me these opportunities. It gives me opportunities to talk about diversity, inclusion, and things that need to happen in the engineering field. And they have really been the only ones that have been able to give me that opportunity to talk about this and to talk about my story as if it matters, which I hope it does. So, you know, after I toured the world and came back, I realized that the rest of my life was going to be ruined if I didn't continue. So when I came back from touring, I decided that I was going to continue my engineering career, because that's where I felt the most comfortable in life, and I was given the opportunity to do that. I almost ruined it. I don't regret it, because the touring was one of the most amazing things that happened to me, but had I lost out on my career, then it would have been, I don't know what I'd be doing today. I wouldn't be here, that's for sure. So, let's see. Here are my final thoughts. And what I'm trying to tell you by saying that I didn't go to school and everything worked out for me is that school takes forever. It's many years of your life. It's arduous. It will put you in debt. It will be long nights and tough work. And I'm only guessing these things because I never went, remember? So what I'm trying to get at is it's worth it. I mean, everything that you go through is worth it. I've seen interns at my current company who went to school and then got a job at Elemental, and they're already working at this huge company. And Amazon touches everything. Amazon is everywhere, right? It's this humongous company that the owner's like the second or third most, third richest person in the world. So they went to school and they got an intern at Elemental, and they were able to stay there, and they work at a really great company. And what I'm saying is that you have to persevere and continue with their education, and you call the shots, and just get through all of the tough work that you have to do for school, and don't give up on that. Thank you.
I think we have at least a minute or two if anybody has a question. Yeah, questions? Questions? Yeah, there we go.
This Kit Kat's so good.
Could you please define arduous?
Arduous. Do you mean define it in the sense of how arduous school can be? When I say arduous, I just mean that you have to work really hard all the time. When I had friends who, when I was not going to school and I was just working, I had friends who were going to San Diego State who were trying to get their CS degree, and we would text back and forth, and they would be up until 4 or 5 in the morning working on something for their class, and it's just this slow slog through of things that you have to do. I mean, getting a CS degree is not easy, and it's a lot of, you have to learn it. Okay, so I speak Spanish. I learned how to speak Spanish from a young age. CS and programming is like learning another language, and you have to slog through all of the different nuances and stuff that language is trying to tell you. And not only that, but you have to be able to utilize that language in a way that no one else has. Programming is, there's a lot of like open source stuff that everyone can bring in, but you have to take that open source code and then utilize that on a product that no one else is making and push it further than anyone else has, right? And you have to be able to figure out what no one else has figured out. And that's just an arduous process. I think it is. I think it's difficult. I've seen engineers at my work who are like, I have no idea what this is doing, but I have to figure it out. And not only that, but you have to figure it out at a certain deadline. That's really what I mean.
Others? Questions? Okay, well, that's actually pretty good timing because you guys have like 30 seconds left. All right, thank you very much.